So just to show you, and certainly we appreciate Administrator Ducheneaux and all he has done for us and producers and us as agency employees. And here's where we are at. Look at that. Look at the numbers. Over 11,000, 51 state offices. Just even in South Dakota alone, we have 55 county offices, USDA service centers, and 350 employees. And we're so proud of that and the work they do all over. And with that, if I go back, we'll talk at the end of how to connect. If you are not already connected to those local folks in the local service centers, we'll connect to those. And as I bring this up with employees, I think there may actually be other FSA employees in the room. I know I have Owen Figuerhaug, who is our conservation program manager from South Dakota FSA. Owen, raise your hand, brown hat. I would say in the hat, but everyone in Las Vegas wears hats, so that doesn't work. But he would be great for discussion as well. And is there other FSA employees? Yes, right here. Are you? Oh, wonderful. Thank you for being here. We have a state executive director, Arizona, because these would be good resources, y'all. So raise your hand high. So afterwards, if there's questions. Oh, we got a bunch in that row. Who's here?
Smart Program Chief, Oregon.
Okay, Org. Awesome. Thank you for being here. And one more. A couple more. Arizona.
State Executive Director, North.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for being here. So just resources because I want to know and just point that out in case afterwards we're all happy to visit with you as well. And then, so this is what interesting because here's our chart. Like how are we organized and how does this work? And that's where you can see the administrator who we have in the room and then our deputies of the farm loans and farm programs, the state executive directors, which we have a few here today. And then we get out into the state office and the county offices and the folks that you're working with right at the counter. Different things. What do we provide? So we kind of group these together. So conservation, lots of different things we put in conservation. Grassland and conservation, improved wildlife habitat, the different things that we're looking to do with our programs. And then disaster relief, yeah, those are the programs and the different things we're going to talk about today as we get through the next slides. Financing options, a lot in loans. I have a history of the agency over 31 years working in farm loans, a senior farm loan officer. Recently just took off that hat and doing outreach, but that's where my heart is, and so appreciative of Administrator Ducheneaux and the whole farm loan team for the monumental changes that they made. That would be a whole nother session that actually Zach will be talking about. So tomorrow. So we encourage you to come to that one as well. And so lots of just different loans and tribal land loans and things like that we'd be happy to visit another time. And disaster programs, essentially in the national natural disasters, like he brought up, the hurricanes, the blizzards that we have in the Midwest, right, in South Dakota and those things. We have a number of USDA programs that can offer assistance to help you rebuild and recover from those. Okay, different types of disaster programs that we're going to talk about. Livestock losses, again, just on this screen, how many do we have? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're like lots of acronyms. But this, if you think about it, what type of producer you are, what type of operation, and then what kind of our programs fit into that can help you, whether you're a livestock producer, crop, the debris removal that he talked about, the emergency conservation program, and then he also mentioned the emergency forest restoration program. And the next few slides, we'll just highlight a little bit of those. We don't get into a lot of details and eligibility and training, but we want to give you an overview and then encourage you to reach out to your service center. And some of you, if you have questions or individual situations or scenarios, please feel free to contact us after, and we'll visit about those. General questions, we're always open to hear about those anytime as well, so pop in with those. Whoops, did I go too fast? I did. So here's the first one, and this is LIP, Livestock Indemnity Program. And this is going to benefit producers with livestock losses due to deaths in excess of normal mortality. So keep that in mind. We do factor that in. The state committees will come up with a percentage of what normal mortality would be. And then it has to be caused by an adverse weather or an eligible disease is also been added to that. It does include now, just recently, the M. bovis in bison is included in the LIP program. And some things to remember with this, because it's changed a little bit with the notice of loss, but for the livestock indemnity program, it is still always important to contact the office if you have some sort of loss, but you do have 60 calendar days following the end of the year. So every year now, you actually have till March 1st of 2025 to do your notice of loss and your application for payment, which is the same form, but there's separate sections on it, in order to get LIP program benefits. So right now is a good time to think to yourself, did you have losses? Did you have the storms, the hurricanes, the things obviously we think of in South Dakota is the snow, the blizzard, that are adverse weather events that are not normal. Even in South Dakota, we had a blizzard the beginning of May. That's not a normal event. That would happen then. We were not prepared. We had one early October, Winter Storm Atlas, if you remember that many years ago. Very devastating, early October. So many cattle were already, out on pasture. They weren't even in yet. So anything that would be like that, and then in excess, we go through and there's payment rates to it. We won't go in through all that, but I can connect you with that if you're curious. Or again, if you've had losses, just contact your FSA office and then make sure we don't miss the March 1st deadline. Okay? Yes. Yes, please.
State committees set normal mortality. It's important that you're represented on your state and county committees, because those are the type of things that those committees of producers have a chance to weigh in on, to make sure that they're getting relevant and useful information, because mortality in South Dakota might be different than mortality in Florida or in
Great
California.
point.
So we need to have your input on those state committees.
And that's what's so important, sorry, just a second, about the local control. What other government programs can you actually have some say and input in the administration of government programs? And this is a perfect example, state and county-wise. And I'm sorry, you had a question. Did you have a question? Are you sure? You're welcome to ask. No, he's real good.
No, I wanted to, kind of piggyback off that, but when we have a spring storm in May, we had a pretty bad storm, and then in October, and then again in December, but then when you go in and apply for the payment, you still gotta take a normal mortality rate on your date calves, and then again, they take a normal mortality rate on a 500 weight calf, and it's the same calf crop. So we're leaving normal mortality rate in spring, normal mortality rate on a 500 weight, when it's the same calf crop.
You get your normal mortality stacked up. Yeah.
So it's twice.
The state committee is going to be open for nominations directly. We need producer perspective on those type of things.
Yeah.
But that might be something we can address in regulation.
Just curious, I
Yeah.
just something to point out, so that, it's the same 1 year contract.
That's a very good point. Yep. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah. Anything else on the Livestock Indemnity Program, LIP? This has been around for a while, and remember, some of these programs are there, and then if there is the natural disaster, they don't take another act of Congress for us to implement these programs. Okay, we have them on the books in the regulations. Should a disaster occur, we can help and offer the recovery with these. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Say, a question, we're talking about state committees, but I was wondering about the state committees. Do they have jurisdiction over our tribes, in the sovereign communities?
So the question is, do the state committees have territorial jurisdiction over sovereign tribes and what's going on there? So it is the Federal Farm Service Agency committee at the state level. It's not a committee of state government. It's a federal instrumentality and delivering a federal program and guidance out into Indian country under that federal relationship with Indian country. So it's not a state committee that would cause concern about sovereignty or jurisdiction with respect to tribes. It's a really good question. We should be more clear when we say that. Thank you.
Yeah, that was good. So the livestock forage program, this is one to just think grazing losses. If we break that all down and be definition, livestock forage program is for grazing losses. And we've seen this. This is one, and he mentioned as it is applicable, and I'll show in the next few slides, on the drought monitor. And we've had this. And even in states, it varies across the nation, but in South Dakota just this summer, we had severe flooding in southeast South Dakota. And then we had drought in western South Dakota. So it could vary even amongst your states and your areas where you're at. So the programs we have are applicable for your area, and that's why we want you to know about them. And I put my plug in here when I say that. So that's why you want to be receiving your county government, your Gov Delivery bulletins, those email newsletters that you get, because they're specific for the programs that are being administered in your county. So with this, it's eligible livestock and forage producers. So essentially, do you have livestock or are you raising and have forage as well? And then it pays like a payment up to the 5 month, and I'll show you that depending on how the drought, how long with the D2 or D3. And then also it is if there would be wildfire as well. So I wanted to talk just a little bit, and I think I do have, the pictures to show you on the drought monitor, because that is what the drought relief in this program, again for grazing losses, is based on. And so UNL, University of Nebraska Lincoln, is actually where the drought monitor comes from. Always comes out on Thursdays. Many, even here, many local news stations will pop that up, or you can go online and view that as well. And so what will kick it in will be 8 consecutive weeks at D2. D2 is just like it sounds. That's the second level of D1, obviously, and then D2. So if you've gone 8 weeks at that, it would kick in, and then it starts with however many. That would be 1 month payment. If it's longer, you get 2 and 3 and 4 months payment of what the cost of feed that you're missing. Or 4 consecutive weeks at D3, and there's some different things. So if some of those 2 things kick in right there, then your county, because it's county specific, is eligible. So it's not statewide. It's not the state of South Dakota. There's 9 counties specific. In your state or your county, you would need to know, contact your office, or if you haven't seen anything in an email, if you feel like you're in a drought or having forage losses, it's specific to you and your area. And so here's just an example of what it looks like. This is a real deal, just from last week, where you can see even out in the western part of our state. Although I think they had a snowstorm the day I was leaving to come here, so maybe they've had some moisture, but still in extreme drought. And then it just gives you an idea, as you look at what we're saying, the D2, D3, anytime D4, that would make this program available in your area. But you do need to apply. So that's the whole thing. These programs are available, and we don't want you to miss out on those deadlines. And I have that on here too. This is actually the entire state or entire nation, so you could take a look and see maybe where you're at on there. And this is updated. This was last Thursdays that they always publish them. And so that's when we say the weeks, it goes Thursday to Thursday. Any questions on the drought monitor? Kind of how we're using that, and that's all regulatory, and how we use that to trigger the LFP program for grazing losses. Yeah, and that's what's interesting. Correct. So there is, do I have that in here? Yeah, yes. I thought I had a slide in here about the normal grazing time frame. It might be on one that I missed, sorry. So again, the application deadlines. So it goes into the next calendar year. So as you've experienced, if your county was eligible for LFP in 2024, you actually have until January 30th of 2025, but don't wait, right? There's no reason to not go in now. Or if you get some downtime, go in and work. You don't want to miss that. And file the notice of loss, go through the process, application for payment, all of this to happen by January 30th. Because the program's there, but we need you to tell us that you had that loss so that we can get you that assistance. And so, exactly, I think it was mentioned about the normal grazing period. That is also determined by the state committee. So, like for instance, it may be April to October 15th was the end of the grazing period in South Dakota. I can't speak to every state. Every state committee has it, and they establish what a normal grazing period is. So if the drought is happening during the normal grazing period for your state, is when those D2 and D3 on those maps. Okay? Any questions before we move on to the ELAP program, or any other thoughts on LFP?
A lot of times when you say go in and apply for it, like where in mine, I'm in Mississippi, they act like they don't know what we're talking about or cannot even apply early They have no idea. So what do you say when you go in there and you ask for it and they don't know what we're talking about?
For 5 more weeks, call me, use my email address, and let's try to get it fixed while we're here. But in every case, if you feel as though you're eligible for something, leave a written record. Turn in an application, follow up a conversation with an email. I was in your office in Natchez, Mississippi, and you told me I couldn't apply for the Livestock Forage Disaster Program. I just want to make sure I have that clear. Email it to them, copy yourself, copy me if you want to. Now you've got a record of accountability. Don't get a receipt for service. Email it. You write the story. I mean, they're obliged to do a receipt for service, but I guarantee they're not. Good staff do that. But that's where we've got an opportunity. Every one of our FSA team has an email address. And if you send a message to them and says, I understand you to tell me I'm ineligible, so I couldn't turn in an application, now you've got due process rights. If they do a receipt for service and it says, producer come in and asked about LFP, they've accurately depicted that, but they're not telling the whole story. So you have an opportunity with an email address to do better than a receipt for service, because you can make sure that we all understand the same thing. That's the challenge, is a lot of the bad feelings that we have as producers with regard to FSA or other government programs or agencies are because of a lack of a shared understanding. And you can use that email to get there on that. And it will supplement the receipt for service. Sorry, Owen, I shouldn't have shouted you down like that. It's a valuable tool, but the challenge is, yeah, good question, thank you. Always leave a record. Yes.
What do you think one of the options would be, or how to fix the grazing season situation that we're in? We should be East Dakota and West Dakota instead of South Dakota. But, I mean, it doesn't work for the whole state. I mean, you know, the grazing season doesn't work for the whole state.
Yeah.
So that it can't, it's just like our, we should be by county, but we can't just pick South Dakota as the grazing season is the same for the whole state.
So what this prospective state committee candidate is talking about, what's a solution to that? One, get your ass on the state committee. I'll put the nomination in for you. Two, change the grazing season. We should acknowledge that we're trying feverishly to get people to do climate smart grazing, to improve their grazing practices so that they might have year-round forage opportunities. The grazing season isn't just when things are green. You are stockpiling forage out there for the winter instead of baling it up, and it might end up under 8 feet of snow. So
If you're grazing on April 15th, you're not giving your grass the good growing that it needs to have to feed them.
yeah,
So a good conservation isn't turning until January or
yep, and he's saying a June 1st turn-in date's better. Yeah, then different producers have different production practices. These tools we have are really blunt instruments until we get people in there that have the mind to sharpen it through policy. And then we've got to make sure that we give our team the tools, the technological tools to implement that, because that gets pretty challenging too. If we've got 45 different counties with 45 different grazing seasons. Thanks, Dustin. Go ahead, Gail.
So Administrator, how many members are on the state committee in each state? And if you're not selected for those one of those five, please also tell about the efforts that you could be serving in a county and what that can help the state committee then do.
You bet. Thank you, Administrator. There are 5 state committee members for each state. They work really closely with the state staff, the state executive director, and one of the other roles, in addition to setting these metrics around grazing seasons and more normal mortality, they're a review panel. If you get a decision that you don't agree with at your local level, and your county committee upholds that local decision, you can appeal that to the state committee, and the state committee can overturn that. If they envision themselves as affirmative decision makers. A lot of times they just say, no, they denied. If we can help a producer, we should help a producer. If we don't want to do that, maybe we should find another line of work. That's the way I feel about it. But I've said that for the last 4 years too, so it's not just because I'm coming to the end of this deal. Good question. County committees are an important part about making those local and sub-local determinations. I shared with you the story of the county committee member who called me in Nebraska. His county wasn't seeking to request emergency conservation program be opened for them to apply, because the disaster was too narrow in scope. What the hell is the purpose of having a county committee divided up into local administrative areas if you're not going to do sub-county policy? We should have entered him up. We did get that done finally, but it took several months. And that's some of the things that having good representation that believe in the role of the federal government in helping producers can certainly help streamline. Is that what you was asking? Good.
So it's not a question, Administrator Ducheneaux. I just also wanted to mention to run for your county committee. If you have the opportunity to be on your county committee, they actually make those recommendations up to the state committee. So if you have the opportunity, the state committee is an appointed committee. They're not elected, but the county committee is elected by all of you. So please, if you have that opportunity, run. And coming from the agency, I can tell you that we beg people to be on the committee because we need your representation. Thank you.
And a fun fact about this particular administration, after those county committee elections happen, our team at the field operations deputy area takes a look at the representation, and if there ain't enough Indians represented on that county committee, we'll appoint one, and we'll give them 3 years to learn the role. So we've made a tremendous improvement in that to help make sure that our underserved producers are actually represented. And the other point I wanted to make that Janet pointed out, run for that committee, that there are 3 to 9 members on your county committee seat. Your county's divided up into local administrative areas, and it might not be that your particular local administrative area has an election next year, but it will in one of the next 2 years. The really cool thing is if you're a member of a tribe that has agriculture, you're eligible to vote in that election, whether you're a producer yourself or not. You don't have to be actively engaged and producing your own crop to be able to participate in that county committee election. There is no good reason that I haven't cussed all day. There's no good reason that every dang county committee in Indian country isn't fully made up of Indian producers. You can all vote, exercise your right to vote, get with your tribal government and make sure that we have access to the rolls so that we can get you the damned ballot. Otherwise you can't get, otherwise you have to go in and request it, but you can all go in and request a ballot and vote. Thanks, Janet, for bringing that up.
Really good discussion, and that'll take care of my COC election slide. I love it. We've already talked about it. So this is great discussion. And we do have other FSA folks, and certainly Administrator Bunger from RMA. She was with FSA for many, many years. Lots of experience, and also from South Dakota. So thank you for being here in our session as well and sharing your expertise too. So that is LFP. So now we're going to go to ELAP. And I probably will call it ELAP because this is the one with the interesting long name. But it's meant we don't want to leave producers out. And that's where I always have to remember that, right? I was born and raised in South Dakota. I'm not familiar with farm rate, or we don't have fish, but like the different ocean things, the fish and the things that go on out there. We just don't have that. We have cattle, corn, beans, wheat, sheep. Those are the sorts of things. So remembering these are national programs. So everything I talk about today are national FSA programs. So what's important to remember about ELAP, so we've talked about livestock indemnity, which is the death losses. Livestock forage program is grazing losses. The ELAP program will provide that financial assistance for losses to disease and other things that essentially are not covered by the first two. So keep that in mind, okay? That's what ELAP is great because it covers other things not covered by other programs. Feed transportation is a really important one here. If you think about it, when grazing and hay resources have been depleted, correct, in a drought. And so here is the situation. You are hauling hay in, and we have, of course, rates and ways to do this, but we need you to come in and apply for that and tell us and get us some of that information. Also, hauling water. That was one we had used in our area. Even I'm in a county office as well, so I'm very familiar with these and have my own small farming operation. So I'm familiar with some of these that have happened as we've struggled with droughts the last few years. How about hauling livestock to forage or grazing where you had grass that they could eat, right? So this is also included in here. It wasn't included in the first two programs that we talked about. Grazing period had been extended for this and the perennial forages nationwide. And again, since it is county specific and area specific for what's happening in that area, always keep in touch with your local office. Did you have thoughts on this? Yes.
We really struggle at the agency to say, we will actually help you buy hay as well under certain circumstances. Not only will we help with the freight, we will help with the purchase of above normal feed in certain circumstances. And we don't just come right out and say it. And I think it's partially because sometimes we can't even believe it's true because it's such a goddamn great deal. There I cussed. That's the best program going today for livestock producers. Make sure you're asking about it. I think it's tied to the D8 drought monitor trigger. So, but keep your eye on that. We can help purchase hay and haul hay for your livestock to keep that herd together.
Thanks, good point. Yeah, so any of that where you did not have hay or grass and you went out and purchased, normally you would not have to purchase because you have them grazing. That's exactly what he's saying. You literally had to go purchase hay that you would not normally have done, and that is part in this program. So that's why it's so important to reach out and connect with your office. If this scares you some when you think ELAP and you don't have some of these, and even honeybees with a colony collapse and things like that, falling under this, or if there is farm-raised fish, folks in here, there might be, I'm happy to dig into that for you as well. But just know there may be another program. If you don't think you fit into one, you may fit into another. Just a second, Jen will come get, yeah.
I'm sorry. I have another condition that you might want to consider adding, but hauling water but you have hauling water to drought areas. How about hauling water to flooded areas? We had an instance where, massive flooding happened because of climate change. We had huge, anyway, it shut down our irrigation. But I had a number of farmers that didn't have any water as a result. So we had no choice but to truck in water to try to save the farms, the crops. And, but that, so that's a condition that you don't have listed. You have hauling water for drought, but how about hauling water for flooding?
You're talking about hauling water to irrigate the crops? Yeah, I mean, that's something that's not covered in this particular program because this is for livestock, honeybees, farm-raised fish. That would take a statutory change because this is a animal-based program. But you make a good point. Make sure you let Ms. Fain and Ms. Hotvet know about that's a need, because they've got some farm bill suggestions that they're going to be making and advocating for. We can sure take a look at it. Yeah, I'll talk with those ladies for you.
Oh, Marcia, right here is a question. Jen, Marcia's got a question.
Can I come to the FSA office for the same disaster and be eligible for ELAP, this program, LFP, and NAP on the same? I mean, I think it's good for people, and I don't know the answer, so that's why I'm asking it, but, oh, okay. But can I get the benefits of everything?
Yeah, I love people that ask questions they know the answer to. Yes. So remember, LFP is 150 days. There's 365 days in a year. So ELAP can come in and cover the rest of that if the conditions warrant. NAP is catastrophic level coverage that all of you can come in and sign a form and have free catastrophic level coverage for your non-insured crops. Non-insured crops means all of that, but it's typically crops that don't have a federally subsidized crop insurance product. But there's a pretty exhaustive list of those. And you see that Gail's got here, the service fee waiver is in effect for our producers that meet socially disadvantaged or historically underserved designations. That's socially disadvantaged, which is minority, Hispanic, Latino origin, Asian Pacific Islanders, Hawaiian descent, broadening African American farmers, broadening it to veterans, women, and young and beginning farmers with the historically underserved designation. Your service fees are waived if you're in any of those categories, which is everybody in this room. Got a question back there?
Now you're getting to something that I can finally ask a question about. I'm here with Chippewa Harvest, a company owned by the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa and Belcourt. And we recently began raising industrial hemp. And we have learned a lot about the crop. That's non-THC hemp used for food. And of course, in October, we became the first tribe in the nation to have our own line of hemp hearts. And we're coming out with hemp protein and our own line of hemp oil as well. But in talking about the disaster assistance and trying to insure things, I learned that there's certain crops that hemp can't follow that make them ineligible to be insured. Hemp can't follow hemp in a production year. If you plant hemp 2 years in a row, our soil scientists tell us we can. It's good for the soil. But for insurance purposes, it can't be insured that second year. Also, every crop that you plant can have a prevent plant claim put in, except hemp. And I tried to find out why, and I wasn't given an answer why. In North Dakota in June, we had a lot of rain, which prevented us from getting into the fields by June 15th. We had rain every 2 out of 3 days in the month of June. So the fields were too wet for us to get into. So as a result, we had some fields that were uninsurable because of that. But also, you can't do a prevent plant claim for hemp. So I'm just wondering, and this says, for crop, when insurance is not available, does this cover hemp?
That's a really good question. And you have the tremendous good fortune of having the best RMA administrator that's ever run that outfit right here in the room who knows more about that than I do. And I'd ask her to answer that.
The hemp product is in the pilot stage. So there's different ways that products come to be, policies come to be under the RMA umbrella. And one of them is called the 508H statute. So Congress dictated that we're going to allow private submitters to come in with new ideas. And hemp is one of those 508H products. So what I ask that you do, because it's under pilot status and it's held by a private submitter. So that private submitter has the ability to tweak and change the rules around the hemp policy. They bring it to the FCIC board, who now Ryan Langford is a board member. He is from a Montana tribe, and really push that you want to be considered prevent plant eligibility for hemp. That's number one. that I'm hearing about your question. Number two, hemp on hemp. So that I would have to probably verify if you really can't have hemp on hemp. I hadn't heard that before. But if that's the case, again, that's something that that private submitter that holds that product, that they need to have that conversation. So it would be a good way to either communicate that through RMA's regional office, and our regional offices are identified on our RMA website. But if you're in the Northern Plains region, it's Billings, Montana. And who we have at RMA here at the conference tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock is Jeremy Not Afraid from that RO office, and he will hopefully be able to answer some of the more technical questions, but that would be another topic I would raise. And we also have the ability, if you don't have that particular crop as an insurable crop in your county, if it's being insured in other counties in the area, what's available is apparently was a big fat secret until I came to RMA, was written agreements. So if you have a history of planting that crop, even though it's not identified as insurable in your county, your crop insurance agent needs to work with you in submitting a written agreement so that you can possibly get crop insurance on that particular crop. And again, you know, when I think about hemp on hemp, if you have agronomists that are supporting the idea that there's no problem with having hemp on hemp, that should be a conversation that you're having with the RMA regional offices and communicating that.
Thank you, ma'am.
I have a question for Padley here. She's the one that helps me. No, I'm just kidding. This is pertaining to what you guys are talking about. This summer, usually we do really good with our crops, corn and watermelons, cassavas. And this is from Tuba City, Arizona. And I'm sure you probably would have probably heard from the Hopi and the Navajo. I'm Navajo, Rosemary Williams. Usually we really do good every year and know what we grow, and we rotate everything. You know, we do make sure that our land is, you know, in good use while we plant and things like that. It's just that this summer it felt like it was so short, and it's either freezing or cold or hot. We reached 108 to 110. You know, we've never reached that high. And it seemed like one side of your melons were burnt, you know, and usually if it has the growth of how many months it should take, it's just that some of them were small and it didn't mature enough. Can we still ask for insurance?
You would have to, yeah, NAP could work possibly. There's not probably insurance for what she's talking about. Administrator Bunger is shaking her head no. But help the USDA understand where we're missing the mark. You can get with someone like Padgley, they can help you write that up so that there's an issue paper, and then we can have Ryan Lankford take it to the FCIC board. We can talk with our folks at DAFP, the Deputy Administrator for Farm Programs. How do we make adjustments to these programs to make them fit what you're doing so that you're covered? Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay, lots of good discussion. I appreciate this. We'll go through a few more of the slides, especially the next ones. Some more of the aquaculture producers. This is mentioned a little bit, ELAP and some of those things that might be available if you do have farm-raised fish. We'll go through, he already brought up ECP. So just briefly, just to show you like the cost share, the up to 75% allowable. I'm wanting to point out, it's really important, that form is an 860 form. CCC 860 is the form where you would certify that you are a beginning farmer, veteran, or a socially disadvantaged producer, and you need to have that form on file. If you do, the system knows that, and you're actually eligible for up to 90% cost share instead of 75. And so I bring that up, and it's probably on several slides, the NAP waiver, different things like that. But it's really important if you are one of those categories that you have an 860 on file. Even for beginning farmers, which I work with a lot, they will put in a date, a month and year that you began farming. And so for 10 years in the system, it knows if there are programs that offer a higher benefit based on that status, it's automatic. Okay, so CCC 860 is a really good form to make sure that you have that on file at your FSA office. But some of the practices, the debris removal, we've had that in South Dakota and across the area, and usually now certainly in the hurricane, restoring fences, conservation structures, emergency waters during drought, and things like that. So a lot is available, as Administrator Ducheneaux said, as well. The county committees have an important part. So then that's where you can also reach out to your county committee members. Know who the county committee member is in your area and talk to them, because they want to hear from producers. They want that local knowledge of what is happening. If it happens to you, report it. And if someone else reports it, but don't think you're the only one, and it doesn't matter what you say, because those local reports of what's happening is what's so important in the county, because that's how the county committee knows. That's why there's different areas. For instance, most typically they will have like 3 local administrative areas, we call them, so 3 different areas of the county. And so, yeah, it may be, like he said, a sub-area, right? Not the whole county, but sub-county part of it. And so that's really important that you notify your local county committee members and the county staff as well, but the county committee is who's helping with administering these programs. He also mentioned about that, the forest restoration project or program, obviously that what's going on in debris removal, you'll see is a lot of it, and then restoration, right? Exactly like Administrator Ducheneaux already talked about. We did also, if you saw, remember on the slides back there when I talked disaster release, we had emergency loans, 500,000 max. You can see what those can be used for. Restore and replace, pay some of your production costs that were associated with it, essential living, reorganizing farm, refinancing debts, and then you repay it back depending on what type of emergency loan we did. And then one thing I'm going to share is that those emergency loans are eligible based on disaster designations. So they're also county specific. Why it's so important to know what's going on in your local area. Be connected with your local USDA service center. Once we have a disaster designation, and I think we have a few slides on that process. Here's if you're looking for emergency loans, there's sites that you can go to. The main thing to remember is farmers.gov. Okay, if we had time or if we get done, I can show you and go to these tools. But farmers.gov is where you can find all things farm, production, and conservation. That's a great website to go. The disaster designations, because we get questions on this as you hear about it. Actually 4 types. So the first, which is the most common, is secretarial. Requires a production loss. There's also a drought fast track designation, which we were seeing many of those come through this summer. And I say we because in outreach and communications, we're trying to get those notices out so you know these are available. Presidential, those are from FEMA, and those also may trigger emergency loans in your area, which is part of our loan program. The administrator's physical loss notification, just like it sounds, the administrator could do one, and it's only for physical type losses, not production losses, and then quarantine if there would be one of those. And like I said, all of those disaster designations, which are county specific, includes a county, and then the contiguous counties, so the surrounding counties also become eligible for emergency loans and like our disaster set-aside program as well. Those are triggered when you're in a county or a neighboring county to a disaster designation. What the disaster designations are very specific. So reach out for those if you have questions. And how that process works, and I bring this up because this is where we need you. We need all of you. And remember I said it's so important to inform the local office too and your county committee if you are having any impacts from the disaster. And we may ask you for some loss records and other information to support the kind of loss claims. And then those are the things that are gathered, and we work with our state office to submit that disaster designation request and within 90 days of the disaster. And that's for like secretary, which is what I said is most common. And also it can be requested requested of the Secretary of Agriculture by the governor, the governor's authorized representative, or by an Indian tribal council leader. So that's really important to note that it could be, or the state executive directors can as well. We've had that where we've had a specific designation for like rosebud in South Dakota. So just know that that can also come. And so make sure you're talking to your tribal council folks as well and letting them know the impacts that if there's been a disaster that has occurred. And then, oh, yeah.
Just to clear up, Indian Tribal Council is a term of art with us all. It needs to be a tribal council authorized representative. So the chairman with a tribal resolution, any tribal member or tribal council member that is packing a resolution authorized by the tribe, they can make that request. It's not just up to Cap Pierman to make a request of the secretary. It's got to be the tribal governing body.
Yep, good point. And then the emergency loans, within 8 months, you need to apply for those. I did have one slide on here because I know we want to talk a little bit about eligibility. And then the next slide will go with it as well on our Apply Now forms that we have. But essentially for our programs, as you can imagine, as a government agency, we need forms, right? We need paperwork. What is nice to know now that we have something that has organized it all together for you, but everything that you need to do with USDA and our sister agencies at NRCS. And I bring that up because I think it's important that you layer benefits, that you work and use these together for your operation, whatever that might be, all USDA programs. Even rural development, we've got RMA here, FSA and NRCS. Do you know rural development has programs? Their rural energy program, their value-added ag program, grant program that might be as well. So I encourage you to lack and stack those benefits for improving and sustaining your operation. So with that being said, though, your journey with USDA starts in the FSA office. So we do get to see you first, or we'd like to see you first. And we have like a customer data worksheet, which of course has a form number, a 2047. Imagine that, we have a form number for everything. But that's a good way that we collect your information. And we want to get you in the system. We want to create a farm number for you. And you say, well, I only have a half an acre of tomatoes that I grow. We can go down to 2.5 by 2.5 inch, I believe, on our maps to create. We can still create a farm number for you. And I think that's what it is so important to keep in mind, because then that's when we have you in our system. We have you as a producer. Certain programs that we talk about are going to have their own forms, and each one has its own application, right? Like the LFP program has an application, LIP, separate applications. But if we get you in just thinking in general what you need to do, and you actively engage, some of these things we talked to you about, and the amount of income and those sorts of things. And of course, I brought up there again that CCC 860. There it is right there. So important that while you're going, or whether you're just getting connected and starting your journey with FSA and USDA, that it's important you do that, because we talked about the increased benefits and then waiver of some of the fees for our programs. And so that's where I just encourage you. And if you can schedule an appointment, if you're a new producer, we want to give you our time. We want to make sure we sit down and go through the process that we need to. Next slide.
We talked a little bit about NAP, Non-Insured Disaster Assistance Program. If you turn in that 860, you're enrolled in NAP. You're already covered. You just need to do an acreage report. And that's another, are we going to talk about those type of things? So a lot of the production that we do in Indian country is kind of the same year over year. I'm thinking about the guys that are grazing. You can do a continuous acreage report that's on file until you change it, so you don't have to come back and do that one every year. So that's acreage report, farm number, and an application are three key parts of all of this. So just make sure that you're aware of those and aware of the flexibilities that we have to offer there.
And keep in mind the NAP application deadlines may be different in every state. For instance, in South Dakota, the NAP application deadline was March 15th. So if a beginning farmer, which I had this scenario, had the form on file, the 860 prior to that, she actually qualified, also as a female, qualified and had NAP, and then was in forage production, and as would come out, she ended up getting a benefit from it. Do you have a question? Is there a question? Sorry.
What if I like to file my report late?
Oh, good point.
Dang, that kid's bright. Comes from her mom's side. Never hesitate to turn in a late filed application. You may not prevail If your county committee is a bunch of shitheads that doesn't want to get people in, but you can prevail. If you file late, there may be a fee in some of these programs, but file a late filed application, pay the fee. It could lead to benefits. You're going to be out a piece of paper and a little bit of your time. So late filed reports, late filed applications can be accepted in many cases. Yep.
Very good. Don't let it scare you. If you've missed a deadline or something has happened, you think you may be eligible for a program, contact the office. We want to work with you, and what we can't if we don't have the information or know.
We got a question over here. Administrator, I was just going to ask you if you could like flesh out for everybody what those rights are. We had a bunch of them in Oregon where the county committee kind of denied some late files and they came up to the state committee. Can you flesh that out for folks?
Someone may need to correct me on this, but the county committee has the authority to accept late filed applications within certain parameters. In many cases, they don't. I've had county committee members tell me they should have just got their ass in here and done this on time. Life happens. If you have the ability to help your neighbor, help your God-forsaken neighbor. When county committees do not allow for that, we'll send out a denial in most cases that's appealable to the state committee or directly to NAD if it's specific to a producer. If it's a broadly applicable deal, we found a way to not let you appeal that. So we're working on those type of things, but file it, talk to your county committee. They don't vote in a way you think they should. Get elected to the dang thing and show them how to govern.
And I'm glad you brought that up. It's important too to stay informed from a standpoint. If you do get a letter and you have been denied benefits, make sure you understand your rights after that, because many times there will be review rights with the county committee or appealable rights, and they're all outlined in that letter. Also, if you have questions, they'll say call, so please call and walk through that. But that's the notice that you're giving you of your rights. So it's really important. Read that mail, take it very seriously, and there's a process. It's okay, especially to ask for the review. That's part of the whole process. And hopefully the equitable access where we're trying to get that for all producers. Now, this is the biggie right here. And so I'm so excited because if you'll see, oh, there's another question. Okay, just a second. Let me finish this one slide really quick because I have these right here. I can't probably go too far away from there. So Jennifer Perez is so instrumental in getting these. So maybe she wants to share a few words about the packet, or can I just show the packets? Okay, so that's why we have it on here, and actually you could scan that. We have a poster of this at the booth as well. If you're interested, that would take you right to it. What these packets are, entity actually has those papers in it. Do you know you could sit down and go through it? And the gentleman that was on stage today talked about, instead of us just coming and talking about programs, coming and sitting down with you and going through and filling things out. This is perfect. We could go through all this. Remember the different things we talked about and eligibility? And I'll show you. So right in here is where it will list like a checklist of what sort of things. This is for farm programs to be eligible for FSA, and all of the programs are right in here. Also, if you go onto the Tribal Nations page, which we have time, I'll pull it up, you can fill them out right there electronically and print them out. It has all of the paperwork, forms that we would need for the eligibility. So when we get to the programs like we're talking about, the LIP, the LFP, all these acronyms we've talked about today, you've already done what we call our eligibility paperwork, and then apply now. You can apply for benefits from these programs. And so we do have some of them up here. Also will be available at, can't get too far away, at the booth as well. But feel free to get those. You can go online, farmers.gov again. We have a great page with tribal. If you go farmers.gov/tribal as well, we'll take you to these. And then we have the QR code as well. So with eligibility, even just to walk through it, if you have an interest and go, what is the types of things I'd need to be doing? Entity, individual, and tribal. So tribal nations, there's one specific to them. So thank you to Jennifer and her staff, a lot of work, and Administrator Ducheneaux for putting those together. Oh, and then here's the page. Partner with tribal nations as well. There, I just kind of jumped ahead, but the farmers.gov/tribal. Great resources on there. You also find out about contacts in your state as well for USDA. I want to share this. Some of you may be computer savvy and enjoy being on the internet all to hours of the night and wanting to check and look this up. We have a disaster assistance discovery tool. I won't take a chance. I'll do it when we get done if there's other questions. But you can see there's actually 5 steps. And what it is you're answering questions, and then you can find out if you have disaster assistance like right there in your area as well. So you do step 1, loss or damage that you had, when, the type, the impact, and where. And so I encourage you to check this out. If it is that you have good internet connection or even on your smartphones and you're interested in looking this up, these are some of the tools that we're getting more and more of those. Remember I said there was loan tools as well, loan assistance tools online. Okay, last couple plugs here for you. It's really important to stay connected and keep informed. And how you can do that is making sure that you are receiving your local FSA bulletins. We call them bulletins or e-newsletters. No, we're not doing out the mailings anymore that we used to do of an actual paper newsletter. This is how you can hear from us. And then I encourage you text messages as well. And you will not be bombarded. We are maxed at 2 text messages per county per month. So just know it will not fill your phone up. Similarly with the emails. Okay, a max of 2 a month, 6 artists. We have some parameters that we've set when we do that communication. Hopefully, when your state communicators are sending their state newsletter, they're also sending it to the county. I do in South Dakota, so if you send it for county, you're gonna get a one from me that has our state newsletter and all of those types of bulletins and things we put out for programs. But specific like LFP, say that drought, the drought monitor triggered it. Those counties are sending out a specific bulletin, okay, an e-bulletin as it relates to that for their county. But the texting's really easy. You all, and I see a few of you, like pick up your cell phone. You just put in, I put a few examples, SD and then whatever. So if it's any Nebraska or whatever, Arizona in the county, and that's as simple as that to get enrolled in that. And in farmers.gov, again, go there, scroll to the bottom, put in your email and subscribe. You can update preferences at any time. You can pick different things. You can pick RMA, you can pick other agencies, NRCS, I get it all. It's fun. I mean, you might want to pick what you get, but that's how I keep informed, right? There's lots of different things or categories. If you want to get beginning farmer stuff or anything else that might be applicable, conservation, there's topics. I encourage you to do that. Look through and see what's in there. And of course, there is that, I forgot about that poor question in the back. Let's go, yep, because we're about done.
All right.
Yeah, I have a comment. Here in the West, our droughts are totally different from the rest of the United States. If we don't get rain, any precipitation within 60 days or more than that, we're dry. It rains just enough to settle the dust on our vehicles. And that's totally different from the rest of the United States. And some of these programs, we need to change from 180 days to maybe for the Southwest area to shorter days of no rain precipitation. I don't know what we need to do, but however, that needs to be changed because the area, I'm from Idaho and Nevada area, and we had enough forage. However, with a drought in 2020 and for those several years, the ground was so dry that our holding ponds, the stock ponds, they went dry, turned into mud. And we're talking about high desert country. And, we can't haul water up to our area where we have our livestock grazing area. So really that's a challenge for producers in my area. And along Nevada, also in Idaho, southern Idaho and northern Nevada and through that area. Maybe here in the Southwest also, I have no idea. But there's some changes that need to be made, and I addressed that to the secretary when I was over in DC.
We agree there's a lot of things that don't fit. We need feedback about what's the solution there then. So I get it. Your ponds are dry and they're muddy. We've got the emergency conservation program that we can use to pipe water over the ground. We've got ELAP where you can haul water and receive payment. If those two don't work, what is the solution for that high desert country where the water's too far away to move it in there. Get on your county committee, goddammit. The county committee asks for and can make the CED request ECP. You don't need a drought monitor for that. Get on the county committee. Coming to you in a second.
Just to piggy off that real quick. So if our county did trigger LFP and ECP, and I'll just use a couple producers right there at home that are getting denied both, so how do they appeal that? What's the process that they should go to use? Both of them should qualify. They both follow all parameters. They should be qualified according to the gal in the office. She doesn't feel like they do. So what's the next step for them to appeal, or how to get it right?
It depends on what the county office is denying. If the county office is denying the event and saying the event didn't meet the threshold, that's a broadly applicable deal. There typically doesn't attach an individual appeal right. If they're denying an application, they should request a reconsideration and appeal to the state committee, or go right to NAD. NAD likes to hand us our tail when we're wrong, National Appeals Division.
Okay.
But
Just so they know.
you got 5 weeks to call me, man.
Okay.
I've got one in the back of the room.
Building upon what Brian said, in Nevada, we also have a situation with NAP where you have to have those independent assessments. And there's no money to pay for those independent assessments. And one of the things that we have is our agencies are facing retirements where our range individuals that have historically provided those range assessments on whether or not NAP is triggered are retired. Now, with that said, we also have assessments in Nevada where those individuals that are doing the assessments, because they're doing them free, are never on the ground. They're using NOAA data and interpolating some of that data based on what data we do have, because there's no way to get on the ground to do those assessments. So I know, and one of the situations in Nevada, when the state didn't have the assessments, they kicked it back to the county committee to find those assessments. But if we can't find them at a state level, how is the county committee going to find those assessments? And then will they be accepted? So I think there needs to be some exceptions to determining that as we're facing staffing shortages. But I don't know if there's any other ways that they can do that.
Buckle up, staffing shortages aren't going to get fixed anytime soon. We got to find solutions for that.
Can I address that?
Sure.
So I was actually on a task force for NAP just recently up at DC. I was on that NAP task force. They actually have come up with some new recommendations on what we can do besides the 2 independent assessments. And I can't tell you off the top of my head, they just sent out the policy. So there are some different options for that. And we have been trying to work with different entities to university. We actually have a commitment from the university, from UNR, to help us with the drought, with the assessments for NAP grazing. But they did, one of the suggestions was to use the drought monitor. That's been opened up, that we can use the drought monitor for NAP grazing assessments. There's a couple others, and like I said, I can't tell you right off the top of my head because policy just came out. But they are taking recommendations, thanks to Zach and the team that he has up there in Washington, D.C. They are listening, so keep talking. And as far as the ECP, if one producer, we have requested ECP for one producer. So you can get ECP even if it's not a widespread disaster. You can get it even if you're the only producer in the county that's been affected. If the CED or the PT or PA now in the county office tells you no, find out who's at your state office. Call your SED. I have fielded phone calls from producers just like you guys when they were not getting the service that they need. You can also call your county or state committeeman. You can call your county committeeman if you're not getting service. There's a lot of different avenues you can use to make sure that you're getting service. But yeah, ECP, even if one producer is affected, we can request it. I've got an ECP contract right now in Nevada for one producer. So
Very good.
thank you, Zach.
Can we get young Ms. M there a copy of that policy change?
Yeah, oh, she's on my state committee, so. Yeah,
I don't know who the university's gonna do.
yeah, I'll tell you, yeah.
But you make a good point. It's a function of resources. I'll wrap up by talking about what I said on the stage earlier. This administration has viewed the work that we get to do, the cash resources that come from the taxpayers that we get to use to help you all, as an investment in the future. That includes the salary and expenses that we use to keep our staff going. This administration sees that as an investment. Make sure your congressmen know whether or not you think that's a good way to go, or if this is where we should balance the budget. I personally don't think it is. Investments pay a return over time. You got to get it out there in the countryside for it to work. We're right at time. If I'll answer questions all goddamn night,
We had
as long
one
as you
more
want to ask them.
question over there.
But I want to be respectful of everybody else here. Okay.
Real quick, we'll go to one. We do have a comment over there, but please feel free to come up. We also have disaster assistance programs at a glance, like if that's possible, right, for FSA, but you'll find it's a handy dandy table as well for some of the programs and what might be eligible based on the different disasters. So please come up and help yourself after that. We did have one more comment, right?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Zach, I've been listening to you all day, and there seems to be sort of an elephant in the room. So I'll ask you directly to level with us. What is the potential for a total disruption of all these programs and services, especially when we're hearing political rhetoric that is speaking to eradication of anything to do with diversity, anything to do with equity? And we've just completed 2-3 years of an equity commission that came up with 66 different results. So there's a lot of work that has been done to put all these programs together. What is the potential disruption for all these programs moving forward? Thanks.
Just listen to what they say. They are proposing to reduce the federal workforce. You know what the federal workforce is? Those 11,000 people in your county offices. Let them know that that's not acceptable. They're still susceptible to a vote in 2 years. Everybody in the House of Representatives, where appropriation bills are supposed to originate, are going to be campaigning for your vote in 2 years. I can't tell you what to say to them, but I can remind you of the civic process. And if you don't like what someone's doing, vote their ass out and let them know what you think of what they're doing. So yeah, there's a danger in every change of administration that there will not be some things continued, but what we have in our back pocket is tremendous support from producers all across the country for the work that we've been able to do in advance. So we got to make sure that we're willing to share our voice in that by calling your congressman. Yes, sir.
Yeah, like a template that we should send out to our.
I don't, but I don't, but I bet there's people in this room that do. I can't. I'll go to jail, but January 20th, I won't.
Well, if somebody has one, it'd be nice to.
The Native Farm Bill Coalition is having meetings right along here. I'm sure they've got that type of literature that can help you with that. That's a really good point. Thanks for bringing it out. Thanks, Glenn. I'm done if you all are. Thank you for your time and attention. Thank you for taking time away from your lives to come here and be part of this process. This is how we build solutions for Indian country and beyond. We got to make sure we keep doing it. Thank you all.